So good morning all. In the last class, we were discussing about pharmacodynamics, and today we have started with the chelating agents. Okay, so chelating agents, chelate means something to cloy and hold it up. So here in the first slide, you can see here that we have used something like a device which can hold on to the one of the molecule there. Okay. So this is showing that we are using some agents which can actually stabilize some of the toxic agents here. So where do you get a chance to use these chelating agents? So chelating agents are used in poisoning of heavy metals. Okay, so what are these heavy metals? Heavy metals, we mean to say maybe iron, mercury, copper, all these agents. So the poisoning of these agents will occur in the industries where these people are working. So most of the time, this can be occupational hazards. They can also be the iatrogenic problems. Iatrogenic means doctor-induced or the treatment-induced. So in case of this iron therapy, parenteral iron therapy, parenteral calcium therapy, all these things can happen. So in case of drug overdoses also, these can occur. So this is the idea of this. What are these chelating agents? Coming to the definition, what is this chelating agent and what are the factors affecting the action of this chelating agents? So chel, the word means claw. Chelating agents are the agents which usually contain polar groups such as SH group or the OH group, which can bind the metal ion as endogenous ligands bind to the metal ions and forms stable non-toxic water-soluble complexes. If we can remember from the definition of biotransformation. Okay, so biotransformation means it's a process which we have discussed in pharmacokinetics. Okay, so pharmacokinetics means I'll just refresh you. It involves ADME, absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. ADME. Okay, so there, in case of this metabolism, we use the term biotransformation. Okay, so biotransformation is a process wherein the toxic molecules which enter the body are rendered non-toxic. The non-polar compounds which enter the body are rendered polarized and they are removed from the body. Okay, so that as simple as that. Uh, Here, in the same way, in the body, if at all some of the foreign bodies or the metal ions are entered, we need to stabilize them and make them excrete without any complications to the body. So here, what are the factors which can affect it? The relative affinity of the chelator to the heavy metal. How much the metal can bind to the body receptors and how much the chelator has the capacity to remove it from that receptor and remove it from the body. And how the metal is distributed in the body and how the chelator can distribute in the body. For example, if the drug is something like iron, which can get distributed through various tissues, there is a storage form of iron, there is a different types of iron deposition, hemosiderin, ferritin, apoferritin. There are various isoforms of this iron which can, where the iron can get distributed, and whether our chelator agent will be moved to all the areas within the tissues, within the cell, and remove that iron and capacity to mobilize the complex, whether we in the body have the chelator which can actually mobilize this complex, and how long the metal is going to stay. For example, if it is a mercury, it will stay for few hundred years. Okay, even if the person has died. Okay, so that by that way we can find out that they were using the heavy metals in their industries. Okay, so that's about the half-life of heavy metal, whether it is a lead, mercury, all these heavy metals, they have longer t-halves and we can identify that whether 500-year-old body which we have found in somewhere excavation, and we can know that if heavy metal concentration is there, the person might have died due to heavy metal concentration, or the person might be working in some of the heavy metal industries. Time after exposure. So after how much of time we have got to know that the person is exposed, and how much of poisoning has already occurred, or how much of percentage of the tissues which has perfused, and how much time we have to bring back the patient. So all these factors will matter when we are trying to save the person from the heavy metal poisoning. So coming to the mechanism of action, how the heavy metals work and how the chelator works. Heavy metal combine with one or more reactive groups within the body. Okay, it may be the oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, all these agents. So and they can hamper the physiological functions. Okay, so physiological functions, enzyme inhibition, oxidative stress, all these can happen with the heavy metal poisoning. So coming to the chelating agents, what are the options we have and where we can use it? Okay, so chelating agents are the useful drugs. The first drug here we are learning is the dimercaprol or British anti-leviside. Okay, so the first drug here is dimercaprol or British anti-leviside. So this is a popular short notes we get. Okay, the British anti-leviside was first used in the mercury poisoning, or the in case of this war gas administration, or they use mercurial weapons. So they used this dimercaprol and they were successful. So that's why it was called as British anti-leviside. Leviside was a poison used at that time. Then coming to the dimercaptosuccinic acid or DMSA. Then dimercaptopropane sulfonic acid or DMPS, disodium edetate, calcium disodium edetate, penicillamine, desperioxamine, deferriprone. Penicillamine is popularly used for the copper poisoning or the Wilson's disease, and desperioxamine and deferriprone are used for the iron chelating purpose. So here is in brief table which will help you to remember what drugs are used for what purposes. The first thing, EDTA or DMSA, they are used for lead poisoning. Then the dimercaprol or the BAL, British anti-leviside, can be used for the arsenic, copper and mercury. So dimercaprol is used for arsenic, copper and mercury. See, we need to remember DMSA is DMSA and DMPS are the something like brothers of this dimercaprol. Okay, so they share some of the similar properties. I'll be sharing with you those things. Okay, so Succimer or DMSA is used for lead, arsenic, and mercury. That means here it can be dimercaprol and this DMSA, both can be used for lead poisoning. Among them, DMSA is more readily it can bind to this lead. Otherwise, all of these can be used for arsenic, copper, mercury. Okay, then coming to penicillamine. Penicillamine is a degradation product of penicillin used for copper poisoning. Then deferriprone and this desperioxam for iron chelating purpose. Dimercaprol, British anti-leviside. Okay, so it was synthesized during this World War II by Britishers as an antidote to arsenic war gas leviside. Okay, so it was used against this arsenic war gas leviside. So oily, pungent smelling viscous fluid. We need to remember arsenic is a very strong poison, and you get very less time to recover the patient. So this was tried and they were partly successful. So dimercaprol is administered intramuscularly in oil. Okay. So we need to remember dimercaprol is for intramuscular injections. Okay. So the other two, what we told DMSA and DMPS, they can be tried orally. So that's how they become brothers here. And the ligands for which we are using it or for the poisoning remains the same. That is the mercury, arsenic, mercury, arsenic, and copper. Okay. So the SH ligand of this dimercaprol compete with the SH group of the enzymes of the heavy metal, and they bind to the heavy metal and try to remove it from the body. So dimercaprol is a metal complex, is stable. Okay, so dimercaprol metal complex is stable and excreted in urine. So urine here should be kept alkaline to prevent the dissociation. So there is a process called as alkalization of urine. If you can remember from the previous general pharmacology classes, we have different poisons where we have to keep the urine acidic in some conditions and alkaline in some conditions. So the basic nature of urine is relatively acidic. Okay, so it may be partly due to the bacteria which are there. Okay, so now we have to turn it alkaline, means alkalization of the urine is commonly used for the barbiturate poisoning, where the acid barbiturates are the sedative hypnotics, and we use this alkalization of urine in case of barbiturate poisoning and also urinary tract infection. Alkalization of urine is done by administration of sodium bicarbonate containing preparations. Oral preparations are there. Okay, so one more reason why where we can alkalize urine is to the heavy metal excretion, that is dimercaprol metal complex removal. We can use this alkalization of urine method. So today I have taught you the three conditions where we need to keep the urine alkaline. So dimercaprol, where we can use it. So we need to remember it as MAC. The mnemonic is MAC here. Mercury, arsenic, and copper. Okay, dimercaprol BAL is used for the chelation of three heavy metals, that is mercury, arsenic, and copper. Okay, so here the other thing comes, that is the lead poisoning. Okay, in case of this lead poisoning, this dimercaprol can be used as an adjuvant in case of calcium disodium acetate. Okay, so and in case of copper poisoning also, here it acts as an adjuvant. Okay, so dimercaprol acts as an adjuvant to penicillamine in copper poisoning, that is in Wilson's disease. See, this copper poisoning can occur in two conditions. One is the problem that is associated with the Wilson's disease, that is copper deposition disease, and in also the patients who are exposed in the industries where copper is used. Okay, so copper poisoning can occur in both the conditions. The important point here is the question mark for chelation of cadmium is till now not answered. Okay, so that's why we need to remember this. It is very difficult to treat this cadmium poisoning, and this dimercaprol is contraindicated in iron and cadmium poisoning. The Bar ferric complex is very toxic. That's why we need to avoid this dimercaprol in iron poisoning. So dimercaprol, what are the adverse effects we can expect? Okay, so it is dose related, not so much damaging, but it can cause rising the blood pressure, tachycardia, burning sensation, inflammation of the mucous membrane, sweating, headache, anxiety. All this can occur. So we need to remember this is an intravenous preparation. Okay, so intravenous preparation, if it not only this drug, for any other drug, we can always expect these tachycardia, rise in the BP, and here it is given it as not so damaging, headache, anxiety. All these things can occur with regular antibiotics also in case of this parenteral preparations. So DMSA, as we told, it's a brother of this dimercaprol or BAL. Okay, so what is this DMSA? DMSA is 2,3-dimercaprosuccinic acid. DMSA is 2,3-dimercaprosuccinic acid. The wide range remains the same. Okay, where we are using it? We are using it for MAC. Okay, remember mercury, arsenic, and copper. Along with that, we can here used for lead intoxication. Okay, so DMSA is more specific for lead intoxication. Okay, needs no combination with EDTA. Okay, there. So in case of this in case of this lead intoxication, we use that dimercaprol along with this EDTA. But here DMSA is alone effective in treating the lead poisoning. Okay, so that's what we want to convey by this sentence. So it is effective in alleviating acute toxicity and preventing the distribution of orally administered mercury. Okay, side effects: nausea, anorexia, all these things can occur, and the liver enzymes are increased. Okay, serum aminotransferases are increased. The best point about this DMSA is it can be orally effective. Okay, DMSA is orally effective drug used for lead poisoning, and it can also be used for MAC as I told. Okay, MAC, what is that MAC we just discussed now. So DMPS is another derivative of this dimercaprol. The other name here is DMPS. DMPS stands for dimercaptopropane sulfonic acid. Okay, DMPS stands for dimercaptopropane sulfonic acid. It is a dimercaprol analog. Okay, water soluble, less toxic. The plus point about this DMSA and DMPS is that they are orally effective, whereas dimercaprol is not orally effective. It was used intramuscularly. Okay, so where we are using it? We are using it for mercury and arsenic. Okay, so the spectrum of treatment remains the same. Okay, so mercury, arsenic, here we are not given this copper. It can also be used there, but it's effective in treatment for lead poisoning also. So DMSA and DMPS, they are effective in lead poisoning individually. So dose here is about 3 to 5 milligram per kg. The adverse effects are the not so much. Okay, self-limited urticaria on IV infusion, they can cause this hypotension. DMPS, Unithal, can be used intravenously and orally. That is the advantage here. They can be used for mercury, arsenic, lead, and copper. So coming to EDTA, okay, disodium editate. Okay, so ethylene disodium editate, tetraestic acid, calcium salt is a EDTA, potent chelator of calcium. You need to remember it's a potent chelator of calcium produces and can produce life-threatening tetany. So tetany is caused in case of hypocalcemia. Otherwise, tetany is also called as hypocalcemic tetany. So causes tetanium IV injections. That means where from hypercalcemia to hypocalcemia we have taken the patient. So we now get two questions. Okay. So when can we get hypercalcemia? So hypercalcemia can be iatrogenic. Iatrogenic means doctor induced. So we are using this calcium in a treatment purpose for parenteral. So sometimes we need to give IV calcium gluconate. Okay, so IV calcium gluconate is therapy for some of the conditions. There, if we have not maintained the dosages, then there can occur the calcium poisoning. Okay, so that is one method. And another, in case of this pathological condition, that is carcinoid syndrome. Okay, there is a condition called as carcinoid syndrome. It's a cancer-like condition where the sudden release of calcium into the serum occurs. In such cases, hypercalcemia will be there. In cases of such hypercalcemia, we can we can use this disodium editate. Now one more question: where this calcium gluconate becomes treatment? So calcium gluconate is used in hypocalcemic tetany. Calcium gluconate is a treatment in hypocalcemic tetany, and also calcium gluconate is a part of treatment of chronic hyperkalemia. In case of renal failure, what has happened is the kidney is not able to excrete excess of potassium. In case of excess of potassium, the heart will go for sudden stoppage in case of in diastole. Okay, sudden stoppage of heart in the diastole can occur in case of hyperkalemia. In such conditions, to save the person, we can give this intravenous calcium. Okay, so those are the two conditions where we give intravenous calcium. So calcium disodium editate. Okay, so ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid disodium calcium salt. So it's a disodium salt of EDTA. Okay, so potent chelator of lead, zinc, cadmium, manganese, and mercury. So here we have a improvised drug. Okay, so the improvised drug here is calcium disodium editate. Okay, calcium disodium editate or EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. So here it's a potent chelator of lead, zinc, cadmium, and mercury. So why I repeated this is because we do not have effective treatment for cadmium poisoning till now. Okay, so the present level of treatment or present level of chelating agents are not able to treat the calcium poisoning to a optimum level, cadmium poisoning to a optimum level. But for lead and mercury and for copper, we have this dimercaprol, DMSC, DMPS. They are all effective in the poisoning. Calcium, the cadmium treatment still remains the important part. Okay. So in this exchange process, its own calcium is displaced from the molecule. So by displacing calcium, the drug will act. That is related to the mechanism. So calcium chelator of disodium mediate. Okay, so high affinity for lead is there. So most importantly, this drug is this chelating agent is tried for the lead poisoning. So orally it's not so effective. So intramuscular, intravenous, it is effective. So intramuscular is relatively painful. They are trying it intravenously. So the drug is not metabolized and is excreted and changed in by glomerular filtration and tubular secretion. So calcium disodium meditate. The another derivative here is the diethylene triamine pentaacetic acid. Okay, remember it as DTPA, diethylene triamine pentaacetic acid. So DTPA is important for removing the radioactive uranium and plutonium. So recently about 1 year or so, there were some KGB agents which is who have got their got some security in US, and they were living in US, and some people they were living in Europe, and they suddenly died. uh, and after trying to know that how they are died, they found that they were poisoned by uranium or so heavy metal. All these things can happen. So if you know that the person is having this poison or the radiation poisoning is there, so there you can use these drugs. Often it happens so that we come to know about this poisoning very late, and we don't have enough time to save the persons. Okay, but in case of the industries where this radioactive uranium or plutonium, for example, the people who are working in this atomic industries, there, if we person is screened regularly and we know the level of exposure, okay, then we can try these agents in those people. Most of the time, they are life-threatening. So adverse effects with this are they do not produce tetany. That means if they are used in case of this uh, calcium poisoning or treating the other poisonings also, they cannot produce this tetany. Whereas initially we told that EDTA can cause this. So nephrotoxicity, kidney damage can occur. and that can be reduced by decreasing the dose. Okay, so acute febrile reactions with chills, body ache, all these things can happen with DTPA. Okay, so nevertheless, this is a very important drug which can save the person in heavy metal poisoning. That is DTPA, diethylene triamine pentaestic acid. So coming to the next drug, most commonly given short notes, okay, that is D-pencilamine. Okay, so D-pencilamine, just it sounds like penicillin. Okay, remember D-pencilamine, in pencilamine it sounds like penicillin. Okay, so it is dimethylcysteine, water-soluble degradation product of penicillin. Dimethylcysteine, the common name of D-pencilamine is dimethylcysteine. It's a degradation product of this penicillin. D isomer is non-toxic and is used in copper poisoning. Okay, so D isomer is non-toxic and used for copper poisoning. So it can be given orally, easily absorbed from this GIT, metabolized and excreted in urine and feces. So strong copper chelation property is there and was introduced in 1956 for Wilson's disease. It's a copper storage disease. It can chelate copper, mercury, lead and zinc. So coming to D-pencilamine uses. Okay, so where we can use it? So Wilson's disease, the other name for this disease is hepatolenticular degradation. So the copper, mercury, alternative, alternative to BAL and DMSA poisoning. So adjuvant to calcium disodium editate in lead poisoning. Okay, but preferred is DMSA in lead poisoning. That we have discussed why and all. Okay. So cystinuria and cystine soles are one of the demerits. Okay, so it complexes with the cystine and prevents the precipitation in the urinary tract. So where all we can use this, that is D-pencilamine is tried for cystinuria, copper and mercury poisoning, and as a disease modifying drug in case of rheumatoid arthritis. So scleroderma, it has benefits by increasing the soluble collagen. Wilson's disease, cystinuria, scleroderma, rheumatoid arthritis. So many uses are there. So D-pencilamine, what all it can cause? It can cause the dermatological problems, hematological problems, cutaneous reactions. All these are possible with pencilamine. So on short term, it can produce this cutaneous reactions. Long term, they can produce dermatological problems, hypersensitivity, aplastic anemia. All these things can happen with the D-pencilamine. The newer drug here is trientine. Okay, so triethyl tetramine. It is mainly for copper poisoning. Okay, less toxic alternative to penicillamine. Okay, also effective in orally. Adverse effect is iron deficiency. We should be able to. Coming to desferrioxamine, desferrioxamine or desferrioxamine. So ferrioxamine derivative devoid of iron obtained from actinomycete, that is the fungal origin. So 1 gram is able to chelate 85 milligram of elemental iron. Unique property that is it can remove iron from the ferritin. Okay. So this desferrioxamine, as we discussed in the earlier part of the class, it should be able to remove the iron from various biological sites. Okay, so it can be able to remove the iron from ferritin, hemosiderin, and to some extent from transferrin, but not from hemoglobin or the cytochrome. Okay, so we are okay with that because the major part is covered here. Okay, so low affinity for calcium. So little of orally administered desperate is observed. Okay, apparently partly metabolized and excreted in urine. So desferrioxamine, acute iron poisoning. Okay, it's life saving. Transfusion siderosis can happen. For example, when we are doing blood transfusion for continuously when the hemoglobin level is low. So continuous 2 to 3 pints of blood transfusion is occurred. There can it can result in transfusion siderosis. There we need to use the desferrioxamide. So with hemodialysis in treatment of aluminum toxicity, it is tried. So adverse effects are in the form of hypotension, histamine release, abdominal pain, muscle cramps. All these things can happen. So desferrioxamine, the orally active iron chelator, next to that is deferriprone. Okay, so orally active iron chelator, there it was parenteral, used in transfusion cirrhosis, less effective and alternative to injected desferrioxamine, less effective in case of oral use, but we need to think always of the orally used drug because the side effects will be more when we compare it to the orally administered drug with parenterally administered. For example, if some reaction has occurred in parenterally administered, it is very difficult to resuscitate back the person. So always we prefer the orally active drug which can be effective at a faster rate. Okay, so side effects and cost of treatment are reduced by orally given drug. Okay, so indicated for iron poisoning and iron loading liver cirrhosis. So side effects, anorexia, vomiting, all these things can happen. So most of the time GI toxicity is there with these chelating agents. So Defera Sirox. So it's a MCQ question. Remember Defera Sirox. It's an oral iron chelator used in the beta thalassemia. Okay, high affinity for iron, less affinity for zinc and copper, but nevertheless they can be tried in a combination therapy. So iron Sirox is a complex is secreted through the bile and excreted in feces. So the next drug is dexrazoxone. Okay, dexrazoxone is again an MCQ question. Okay, where it is used? It is used in combination in the toxicity caused by anthracycline anti-cancer drugs. So anthracycline anti-cancer drugs are doxorubicin and daunorubicin. They are cardiotoxic, and by using this dexrazoxone, we are preventing the cardiac toxicity. So conclusion, the primary goals of this chelation therapy is to reduce the metal retention, decrease the mortality and prevent the complications. So still we are not able to treat the patient effectively in case of cadmium, chromium and platinum poisoning. So platinum poisoning can occur in cancer chemotherapy, platinum based derivatives. So cadmium, again the industries containing cadmium. Okay, so chelation therapy in children, it is a little bit doubtful how they will be effective because they are heavy metals, they have effect on the cytochromes. Very difficult to predict the results. Okay, pregnancy, combination chemotherapy is again difficult. So with this, I conclude the chapter. If you have any doubts, you can post. I'll share the video with you people. So I'll just note the participants I'm told to do.